Can you hear me in this microphone? Or maybe I'll just get one here.
Oh, he's nodding.
Yeah.
What? He nodded.
Oh, he was nodding. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question about the Jankowski amendment.
Ken Joseph.
I may be transposing the letters around here on his name. But I understand that the House already finished their reform package, and that's an amendment in the House. So how is that going to work? Is it an independent bill of its own, the Jankowski amendment?
Yeah, it's Ken Joseph.
Ken Joseph, I was transposing it, yeah.
Congressman Paul Ken Joseph from Pennsylvania.
Right.
Yes, this is an amendment. This is an important amendment. This was attached to the House bill, passed at the end of last year. The amendment actually was something the financial services industry didn't see coming. They didn't fight against it very effectively. They, without question, would like to strip it out. And this is an important line in the sand to draw and then to fight over. Kenjorski Amendment gives regulators greater power and a more explicit pressure on them to break up big banks when they get into trouble. It is not saying you must do it now. It is saying when the system is in danger, you must break up big banks. Now, the big banks hate it. It's much weaker than Brown and Calvin. The big banks, however, still hate it. The most likely course of events is that the Senate will pass a bill, and that then has to be reconciled
Right, got it.
between the House and the Senate. This could happen. This is most likely. And in that conference, we should argue for the conference to be in public, in front of the C-SPAN cameras, and we should fight hard to keep the Jankowski amendment in. There's no question that the financial services people will try and do some backroom deals, people from the banks, will try to get backroom deals and strip out Jankowski. And at the very minimum, we should keep that in.
So, in that amendment, who decides if the banks get broken up? A regulator or, okay, so it's very weak.
So Diane, the problem that you have in all of these decisions is that you decentralize a lot to regulators. And, even Brown Kaufman, honestly, would have forced the regulators to take action. But exactly what action they would have taken would have been up to them. But remember, the regulators are not immune to political pressure. The regulators have to appear frequently before Congress. The regulators can be pressed in many ways, particularly by powerful senators who are on the bank committee, for example, and senators who have other, so bringing pressure to them. Senator Carl Levin, for example, who chairs this Governor Subcommittee of Investigations. So there are ways to push the regulators hard. There is no question that left to their own devices, they won't do anything at all. But no, this is not 2005 or 2006, or it's not the Greenspan era anymore. The regulators have to wake up and solve the problem. They have to realize, they have to remind them repeatedly, practically daily, of how they and the people who came before them really badly screwed up. Have to do better. I'm serious, and this pressure has to be system, has to be intelligent, and we have the facts, we have the history on our side.
Yeah, and people are mad, and they're aware, so that helps. Okay, what time is it getting to be? We're due one more question, yay.
Actually, two, if there's time.
Okay, good to go. Stand up, why don't you?
You've often said, I've seen you on television a lot, you've often said that the economies of scale in banking are reached at roughly $100 billion. What, is that your study? That's the first question. Secondly, if Larry Summers were not Secretary of the Treasury, but a faculty member at Harvard, what do you think he would be recommending?
Larry Summers is not Secretary of the Treasury anymore. He's the chair. He's more powerful.
I'm sorry. I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that.
The head of the National Economic Council in the White House. So he's the guy who actually controls the agenda and sets the terms of the day around the economic discussion at the White House. So he's a very powerful person. What would he say if you were at Harvard? I don't know, and I don't really care. It's not that Larry the intellectual, it's Larry the politician and Larry the person who doesn't sufficiently want reform. And he's a problem. And you know, we pressed him very hard on these issues. And I don't claim we've had huge effect, but sometimes we push with more success than other times. And mostly we work on Capitol Hill. Mostly on Capitol Hill, there are sensible people. There are people rising. There are people who we will help bring to your attention, who are worth supporting, and people who are willing to take on Larry Summers, which is the most important thing.
So why does Paul Volcker...
Now, on the $100 billion number, that's a number drawn from a lot of different studies. Talk about, well, it's also the number used by a guy called Andrew Halde, who's Executive Director for Financial Stability at Banking. So this is, and I've checked this number with lots of people in and around official banking services. I would say this is a number that is uncontroversial. So when I, for example, the Federal Reserve, technical, very good people, they do not dispute me on the idea that the economies of scale and banking are exhausted by the time you reach $100 billion. Some people, by the way, would say it's actually the lower level. Some people would draw the line at $20 or $30 billion. But we are being quite generous to the banks by allowing them to have economy or suggesting our economies of scale or scope or some other social benefits up to about $100 billion. Now, $100 billion bank, by the way, we had $150 billion banks, $200 billion banks. Those are not small banks. Those are not community banks by any means. Those are banks that could, going back to the earlier question, easily compete successfully and aggressively on the international arena. In fact, they would run rings around big, bloated, stupid, state-backed banks in other countries. The idea that we need trillion-dollar banks like Citigroup or Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase, you know, close to $2 trillion each, just to stay competitive is crazy. There's absolutely no evidence that suggests that is the case.
Why do you think Paul Volcker stands on?
Do you want to grab that mic again? Because it's... Oh, here she comes. Sorry we couldn't have more mics, but it would cause too much feedback.
Why do you think Paul Volcker stays on since he's fighting a losing battle on so many issues? Is that a fair question, or can you answer that?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Look, Paul Volcker is a very experienced and sensible guy, and he knows a lot about fighting this kind of policy debate. And I'm not sure that he is going to lose on the main point he cares about, which is splitting up the banks and splitting particularly the so-called proprietary trading desks away from their market-making operations. Now, personally, I don't think that goes far enough. Personally, I don't think it addresses the size issue, which is very important for the political power and their economic power. But I like Paul Volcker's style. And the guy is very determined, he is very tough, he will not take no for an answer, he just keeps coming at you. You know, if we had half a dozen more Paul Volckers, I would be much more optimistic about our collective futures.
True.